Good afternoon, folks. I'm Jay Das, President and co-founder of Sapphire Ventures, and I have three distinguished panelists, all of whom are actually known for over 10 years. None of them actually need introduction, but I'll just go over that and give you a little bit of my history with them. So I'll start with Doug on the far right. So Doug has been a friend of Sapphire for, I think, ever since we started. You were at SAP when Nino and I joined SAP Ventures. And eventually we spun out SAP Ventures out of and made it Sapphire after 4 years of being part of SAP. And Doug was very, very helpful and instrumental in helping us navigate, the intricacies of a German software company and especially Hasso. But then he went on to, at Baynote, and then he was at Splunk, where he grew revenues to over $3.5 billion. And of course, you heard recently that, Splunk got bought by Cisco for $28 billion. And I think now he's at Aviatrix, another company that's on its way to be a company of consequence, as we call it, in the cloud networking space. Next to him is Rob Bernshteyn. I met you actually even before 2008. I met you right after SAP acquired SuccessFactors, and you were running product marketing at that point. And then you quickly left, after the SAP acquisition. And then Charles Beeler from Eldorado and we were in a company called Coghead, which was, trying to be like an app dev platform. And we tried to recruit you for being the CEO of that company. And Rob quickly kind of looked at it and said, no, that's not going to work. And he passed. And then he came back and took on the job at the CEO of Coupa. And I think at that point, you recapped the whole company. And, it was a really, really nice valuation. I wish I remembered what it was. But, since then, you took Coupa to over 700 million in revenues, and what it was managing about 3 trillion in spend when you sold it to Thoma Bravo. And then last but not least is Sudheesh Nair. He is the CEO of ThoughtSpot. And I met you at Nutanix, right, when we were doing due diligence. Although I think, given that I've been investing for so long, I probably met you even in your previous company, in the storage company that you were at.
Possibly, yeah.
Right? But one of the things that Sudheesh has taught me while I had the privilege of sitting around the table at Nutanix while you guys were building the company, and you took it over $1 billion of revenue from $0 in revenue. But you really taught me how go-to-market teams can be reorganized and can be done properly and very differently than anybody else. And of course, now I'm watching you do that again with ThoughtSpot. So anyway, I think what we'll do is we'll ask, I've been given a set of kind of generic questions I've told the panelists to kind of go through, talk about, their journey as they have built these companies of scale and what they've found. So maybe, Doug, we'll start with you. What were the things as you built Splunk and I know you met SAP, what was the most challenging stuff that you saw and, encountered? And maybe more on the sales and marketing side, given that we have mostly sales and marketing leaders here.
Sure. So I joined Splunk in 2013. We were just about to finish a $300 million revenue year, which would have been about 100 million in ARR. We wound up, my pitch, I joined as CRO. And my pitch to the board a year and change in when Godfrey decided that he really meant it, that he was going to retire, and that I was the internal candidate, was we needed to transform this company that was public into a cloud company. And for any of you that look, there's very few companies in the industry that successfully do that, period, much less as public companies. And the board was crazy enough to say, yep, we're going to let you try that. And when I left a year and 3 quarters ago, March of 2021, we just had finished a $3.2 billion ARR year and had roughly 60% of bookings in the cloud. But it was painful 100% of the time. Like, there was not a day that wasn't just ridiculously hard, but fun. Like, it's an incredible group of folks. And the way that we looked at it was we had this killer product. It had to be completely re-architected. As any of us that have played in the cloud knows, you go from a highly stateful vertical scale out solution to a ephemeral horizontal scale out serverless. That's not easy to band-aid. You've got to start from the core out. So we had to start with product, but what most of the books, I'm not even sure there's enough books out there, there should be, on why is SaaS so difficult? With the real challenge, you can get your arms around product. That's a finite time period of understanding architecture, and there is grinding of gears to get through. The hard part is how do you change the go-to-market, and how do you change the culture? Because cloud is radically different. You start with small bite-sized deals and earn trust over time. You've got to build a true customer success team. It's all about ultimately net dollar retention, dollar-based net dollar retention, not the big, huge landed deals. So the bulk of the challenge I felt was taking our time over multiple years from upfront revenue recognition, just classic perpetual, to a hybrid model of trying to feather in multi-year term deals as being as good as upfront deals, to then beginning to switch to cloud deals were the most important, and then eventually getting where we wanted to. Because 2016, 17, SaaS was a known model. We weren't guessing what the comp needed to look like. But we needed to get to eventually the standard play where renewals are not something you get comped on. You only get comped on expansions within the sales force. But that shift of personnel, culture, metrics, systems, personalities was a lot of patience, but I think was the key to actually getting that growth that we needed.
Yeah. So Rob, Coupa always started as a cloud company. So what was the challenges that you had as you scaled the company up?
Well, primarily the challenge was to get anybody to even care. And then to get anybody...
Including investors like us.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about the fundraiser. It was $7.5 million
That's right.
Post, right?
Yeah.
And at the beginning of 2009, which was a really tough time, not dissimilar to some of the experiences we're seeing now.
15 million posts.
15 million. 15 million posts.
And how much did it sell for?
What's that?
How much did it sell for? 8 billion or something?
Just over 8 billion, yeah.
Awesome.
8 billion. So it's get everyone to care, but it was to create really a flywheel or tsunami, whatever you want to call it, but get employees that would see the vision that I saw for the market opportunity, get early customers to understand what we were playing for, and have them trust us in deals that were 3,000-4,000 new ACV on average that eventually wound up being hundreds of thousands, to get a community of partners to gather around us and drive services, and just working your way around this kind of flywheel to make sure that you can get it spinning faster and faster. And when we got to a certain place where it began to spin, it was how to amplify that and create a community around the vision that we had. A community of people where you can get an unfair advantage, where your customers are actually referring other business. Your employees and your colleagues are referring people into the organization. Your partners are looking for other ways for you to expand internationally. So with each year, as we all know, new challenges present themselves, but it's continuously moving around that operational cycle and getting it to grow as fast as possible.
Sudheesh, you have at Nutanix and then ThoughtSpot?
Yeah, I mean, I have a little bit of both here, in the sense that Nutanix started on-prem, and we tried to convert and go to as a SaaS company. As a public company, highly recommend not do that.
Go private and then do it. Yeah.
So that's why I came to ThoughtSpot, which was on-prem, but it was a private company. But for the first 2 years, particularly because of COVID, we were able to take it behind the barn and shoot it. Like, that's it, no more on-prem business. Look, I think what they said, maybe I can phrase it in so company building and scaling, whatever you call it, it comes down to 3 buckets. The first one is, can you build a product that market wants and improve it consistently? So that's the SaaS part that I've learned. Second is, can you monetize it in a sustainable fashion? What I mean by that, look at in our space, there's a company called DBT. It's a company that everyone knows, everyone wants, but no one wants to pay for. And that's the problem. Someone has to pay for if something needs to be built. So that part is something that I'm learning, which is, can you monetize it in a sustainable fashion? And that is important because sometimes the important thing is to sell and acquire, and then sometimes you want to, margin needs to go up, then operating levers. And then the last part is, can you distribute it with leverage? That is, first hire your own people, then resellers, then OEM, whatever, find ways to, somehow that leverage needs to start kicking in. So if you think of these three things, can you build a product and improve it quickly and consistently that the market wants? Can you monetize it in a sustainable fashion as the company requirements change? And last but not least, can you distribute it at level? Every single step of these things that I talked about, there will be massive new challenges popping up every day, no matter what scale the company is. And you just have to keep looking at them and solving them. That's scale.
Yeah. Maybe talking a little bit about the economic downturn right now, right? Karan just showed, I don't know how many people were here, that the magic number for public SaaS companies has gone from like 0.8 to 0.3, right, in this quarter. And I know all of you guys have gone through economic downturns. What do you recommend? What kind of advice would you give if you were sitting on a board, or even to your sales team if you're running these companies right now, to kind of navigate this time? Doug, maybe you can start.
So my key on what you said, Sudheesh, which is, I think for 3 or 4 years, we all lost track of the laws of physics with products and markets for lots of different reasons. But I think that there's an easy shortcut of growth is all that matters. And the way you apply growth is you just have higher volume of people. So if you want to grow at 200%, just figure out the average quota per rep and whatever support they need and allocate that funding. And one, that doesn't tend to work. Your number one point, Sudheesh, is really important. Do you have a product the market cares about? Do you understand the ideal customer profile? Can you identify those folks? And do you have an easy and effective and repetitive way to go ahead and hit those folks over and over? And the advice I was giving to people in 2021, 22, that I was invested in with the companies, or I was just meeting for coffee and helping these first-time CEOs, was I know money is free, and I know your VCs are going to tell you grow at all costs. This is not to save money. This is not to protect your ownership stake. This is to build a healthy culture and build an effective product. Don't do that. The market signals will be super clear to you on when you need to expand. And I think you went through this a lot, Rob. Like, you pour gas on the fire almost belatedly. I'd rather have reps in the company floundering on, oh my God, I can't handle the inflow. Leads are falling on the ground that we can't pick up that would close, versus the opposite. But I think for a while we got inverted on that. And that's not the way that you build. Forget whether again money was free or not. It's not the way you build a healthy, long-lived, repetitive culture. And so I think all that's happening now is we're back to maybe too much now. Like, we'll see, we tend to overreact. But I think we got a chance to really clean stuff up. I think for most of us that have managed for a while, less people is better. Like, the metric that most of us have in big companies is what's my budget and how many people do I have? Like, horrible metrics. You should spend less than you need to and have fewer people if you really want a tight culture and high kumbaya and low politics and passive aggressiveness. So I think we're back to and LLMs I think could be a huge help in this. We're back to do more with less for the good of keeping people close to customer, close to code, close to each other. Like, the more you can have that happen, I think the more magic you have.
Rob?
I would say additive to that is, particularly for this audience, be willing to evolve your value proposition as external dynamics change. And I think back to our time when nobody was really buying anything in 2009, 10, 11, the value proposition we drove was just savings. We're going to give you savings. I was looking at billboards coming up 101. It was interesting to see how people frame their company with a couple of words. And we were jokingly, SaaS is savings as a service. And then we evolved from there, and we saw that, okay, people are starting to buy, 2012, 13, whatever it was. How can we differentiate? And we positioned it as value as a service, and we quantified the ways in which our offering was driving measurable value beyond savings to the organization. Then when we started building more ancillary products and actually bought some companies along the way and integrated them in, we evolved our value proposition to being the only comprehensive suite of applications that addresses all the kind of spend management needs. And when the economy began to flourish and the conversation began to focus on, ESG and everything related to perhaps child labor with some of your suppliers, or the way that they're dealing with the environment, we made that an ancillary part of our value proposition. So on the front end, being able to evolve the way you go to market in the context of your climate can really help. And then it'll come out, of course, in the magic number, which you need. You know, we managed our business 52 quarters, staying within guardrails of magic number without getting too dilutive or not seizing the opportunity as well. But on the front end of the business, the opportunity to navigate within the context that you're in dynamically in an agile way could be all the difference between yourselves and your competitors out there.
Sudheesh?
I think the macro is a distraction because there's nothing you can do about it. The challenge is the companies, as a private company, at least you are not at the mercy of Wall Street, which keeps telling you whether you are a hero or a zero every single minute. So the leaders in the company, not just the CEO, but the leaders in the company, what mindset do they bring matters. And what I mean by that is, there is this quote by Asilius who says that happiness is a choice that at times requires effort. So happiness is a choice, at times requires effort. I think about a company called ServiceNow. Company was founded in 2004 in San Diego. People were, different company. And then people think about Slutman and team come in 2011, the company going public. I think in 2011 they were, if I'm not wrong, it's been $80 to $90 million ARR, right? Company went public at, 1.2. So think what happened between 2004 and 2011. 2008 happened, right? The world was coming down. AWS came, cloud, Salesforce, all of that. And today the company is over $100 billion worth, right? Between 11 and 23, people remember that, but they forget all of that in between. Every company goes through these sort of things. And when I think about what the card that is dealt to ThoughtSpot, and is pandemic a good thing for the company? No. Is it good for the world? No. But that's what it is, right? So then you have to think about what is the happiness is a choice for the company. And from my point of view, ThoughtSpot was started in 2012. And the first 6 years, whatever we have built, we had to literally throw that away because it was on-prem and there's a lot of stack that was changed. And if we were restarting, who are the vintage in data space for ThoughtSpot? The same vintage, Snowflake and Databricks. I mean, can you compare with these companies? We will never feel we are worthy of getting out of the bed if you compare against them. So the fact that the economy sort of crapped the bed and markets were crapping out, things, that is actually a good thing because now in that under that cover fire, we are able to do the hard thing of rebuilding the company. People are focused on wiping the groceries, and it is actually a good thing that they're not focused on the fact that we are shutting down the sales motion. We are going to customers and saying we are not going to sell on-prem products anymore. So that's a good thing overall. Now, at least until early this year, VCs and others, the financial situations are pretty hard and funding valuations for going down. That's actually a good thing because now customers are tightening the budget, which means that if you, sort of like when the tide goes down, you realize like who's swimming without trunks. If the product doesn't have value prop, you're not able to sell. A couple of years ago, people just say crypto, people throw money at you, So it's actually a good thing when the fad goes away. So yes, I'm trying to sometimes spin everything into a positive, but I start believing it if you do it long enough because there's always going to be some beautiful thing happening there, which sometimes we miss because we're so focused on naturally all of the negativity. So that's the thing that I keep talking to the company. And we have a good leadership team who've been through good days and bad days. Experience really helps.
Yeah, you brought up ServiceNow because actually ServiceNow and Coghead came out at the same time out of Peregrine. I know them both. And, and I knew Rob Luddy when, it was like a $5 million company. And now they're like a $100 billion company. But that aside, all this history, which just means that I'm getting old. Maybe I'll talk, Doug, you mentioned about LLMs, right? Maybe I'll start with you, Sudheesh. How does generative AI, LLMs kind of affect business? I know it's going to affect business in a big way, but what do you guys see happening, especially in sales and marketing? How does that change? How does that help or hurt all the GTM leaders?
I think anyone who says what's happening in the future, they know for sure, they don't know. And I'm also not the preeminent expert in talking about LLM specifically, but I can tell you what we are doing with it. And so we have a product that was started with a natural language search. Like you ask a question, you should get the answer. That was our thesis. We said Tableau has dashboards, they need to die. If you have done Play Bigger, they talk about lightning strike an enemy. This is the enemy for us. Anyone who's staring at a dashboard is wasting their time. They make a decision, find a dashboard that justifies the decision they already made, and that is the data-driven culture that most people are living with. We learn because we talk. And what is the beauty of natural language? It is beautifully vague. What is the problem with numbers? It can't be vague. It has to be precise. So how do you take something that is so beautifully vague and then still deliver precise answer? So how hot is outside? And Rob were to ask how cold is outside. We are both looking for the same number. So for us, we realize that if you build all the foundation for, which we have done before, what was missing was the last mile, the scaffolding, for example, in this case, which was we were having a hard time capturing the intent. So we looked at the movement that's happening in the world of large language models, and we picked that one part, which is extracting the intent and giving us with a very high certainty what the questioner's intent is. We had everything else. So we found that exact missing piece, added it, released it in March, one of the first products to release. Companies like TripActions, now it's called Navan, very technical company. They were trying to build it themselves, gave it to them. For the first 3 months, they kicked the crap out of it. But at the end of it, it became their product. They became a customer. And now we have so many customers paying real money. So for us, without getting into the hype of it, we found exactly where it could help us. We built a product, worked with customers, and quickly iterating. Every week, we are changing the product. And I think, to me, that is the thing. This is not a hype. This is not crypto. This is going to be here. It is going to make some. And we want to be along for the ride as fast as possible because everyone is confused.
Rob, Doug, thoughts?
Go ahead.
I think that LLM is going to be one of the most impactful inventions on daily life of anything that the world has ever seen. So I've definitely bought into the Kool-Aid. I divide the world into those that produce and are going to make a ton of money on the platform or potentially the solutions, and then the rest of us, because Aviatrix is cloud-native networking. There for sure is AI-oriented or ML-oriented work that we are doing and will need to do to help direct network traffic more intelligently and find security vulnerabilities. But LLMs are probably not the right solution for that within our business. But within sales, within marketing, within CSM, within support, within legal, within finance, every area of the company, the productivity that employees can get is, I've never seen anything like it in my entire life. Like I view adopting LLMs as 1999 if you didn't understand Outlook and Excel and PowerPoint, like you just didn't have a job possibility. And I think that's the tipping point that we're at right now. The first thing I did at Aviatrix, literally the very first thing, I hired a 3-person consulting team that came in the first day I was there to develop the AI ops stack and then to evangelize it across every department. And every department now has got a mandate to have 4 different core projects that they're driving. The marketing one that I love is we, like everybody else, we went through massive rifts in 2022 before I got there. Thank God, we're now much more right-sized on spend and prospects on cash flow positive. But we had 40 BDRs that were setting up a huge amount of meetings for our almost 50 AEs around the world. The bulk of those meetings were total crap because we did what everybody else did. We hired 21, 22, 23-year-old BDRs to sell to network engineers, network ops teams, and their ability to actually filter and have the right criteria logically was not where it should be. You've got a hyper-technical audience. What we're rebuilding, we have none right now. They all got wiped out. So it's kind of an interesting riff approach of just look at departments that weren't necessary, which I view as an awesome happiness aspect because you get to rebuild. We brought in our own behind the firewall LLM stack through this company called Coupa.ai. But we now have one BDR who's 40-something years old, deep network expert that is powering our now 15 reps. The quality that we're getting from those interactions, I think that we can have one BDR feed 50 reps over the next 4 years and not have to expand beyond that. And the meetings that these guys are finding and engaging with are off the charts. But every department, I'm finding that. Like, it doesn't matter which function you look at. So I couldn't advocate more just running toward it and figuring out ways to get leverage from it. It's not going to replace us anytime soon, thank God, that I can see. I'm not trying to predict the future, but boy, is it powerful.
Yeah, look, I completely agree. I just have a very simple mental model list that I've had for some time, which is we went through an industrial revolution, which is physical things, and most of our careers have been in the information revolution, and now we're right at the beginning of the knowledge revolution, or the point where you're getting actual insights based on all the massive amounts of data that's being created on a daily basis. So as practitioners, can you be using AI-based tools to do your jobs better, and can you be offering your customers value with the software or the value proposition of your organization that brings them knowledge at the point where they need it? And to make it very tactical, at Coupa, we went pretty far in leveraging what we called community.ai, an initiative we had to help our customers who are managing trillions of dollars in spend figure out how to optimally spend that money, understanding which suppliers they should work with or not work with based on the collective insights of the entire community, what are the right price points they should be paying for goods and services at the point where they were actually about to spend or about to engage with given suppliers. So this is really an incredible time. I mean, you know that from you don't need to hear it from the 3 or 4 of us. I mean, you know that. The question is, how do you embrace it? And my thinking is embrace it in a way where you're either tapping into knowledge or you're offering some sort of insight and knowledge with whatever it is your value proposition is. Company's value proposition is.
Yeah, no, I think, but even a simple product or whatever product you had in networking, the user interface is probably going to change, right? It's not going to be typing or anything, right? It's all going to be, you're going to talk to the application, right? And the application will come back to you and give the answers, right? That's where we are going to end up. But before we open up to Q&A, maybe I can ask the question, what has been most gratifying through your whole journey? Doug?
The people. That's it. I thought I was retired, and I spent almost 2 years advising and investing and trying to give advice. And we came back because you're not part of a team when you do that. You're an individual contributor, and it's great as an extrovert to have the conversations, but getting to work every day with folks, helping them find your company, helping them grow in their careers, helping them have healthy relationships with each other, it makes everything worthwhile for me.
Yeah. 100%. It's exactly the same. The only thing I'd add to that is developing a set of common values with your colleagues as you're working towards a vision is incredibly bonding, and something that we were talking about earlier, something that as CEOs you really shouldn't take for granted on a daily basis, because at the end of the day, it's all about people. It's all about people.
Beating like really large companies.
That's fun.
That's true.
And proving like doubters wrong. I'm very petty.
All of you guys have done that, by the way.
You're kind of Buddhist and you're super competitive. I think that's your strength.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, we'll open it up for questions.
Is it on? Oh, yeah. Thanks, guys. That was incredible. I saw a quote on the way over here that said it takes 10 years to be an overnight success. What does that quote mean to you in your personal careers, and does that jar up any specific memories when you think about your journey?
I'll take that. I think it's all about execution. I think a lot of times, at conferences like this or others, people look in at what's the trick, what's the way to do this differently, if I just did it this way. It's just, ultimately, it's about execution. All the metrics and everything are being tracked, right? I like to think of business really as a sport, right? Especially in a CEO role. It's a sport. There'll be people that are tracking how fast you run. They'll, be working with a team to understand, how you could beat the competition. But it's that spirit of sportsmanship, right, on a daily basis and executing with everything you have that makes the experience what it is. And as you say, 10 years later, you look back and you say, well, what happened there? Well, we were grinding it out, right? And I haven't talked to anyone in the last 30 years of my career that it just kind of happened, especially not in B2B. Some viral things happen in B2C. Yeah. I haven't seen that in B2B.
The thing is, this is actually a really good question. Someone recently said this, which it stuck in my mind, that we get to go to conferences like this, literally and sort of metaphorically speaking. We have front row seats to a lot of shows. But whether it's work or family life, we only have backstage pass to one. So when you talk about 10 years overnight success, whether it's Coupa or what Doug went through, which is a like I was telling him, one of the best stories of enterprise software. We only have front row seat. So it looks like, wow. But he's been the backstage pass on how the sausage was made. So that's a great thing to remember. And it is extremely important now because Twitter has gone to shit. And if you are on Twitter, it's all incentivized for people to speak. So there is no place for lurkers anymore. So learners and lurkers are all gone. It's all speaking, people speaking to each other. So it's very easy to assume that the front row seat is actually the backstage. It's just important to remember. I always try to remember that, they're all putting a show.
Doug?
My kids hate I always say, just do the work. Just do the work. Everything is practice. And but that how I interpret it is like there is no, if there's an overnight success, it's luck. Luck is so important in life, period. And luck can turn, and hope is a strategy, or luck as a strategy is a really bad thing. And so just love the work, because every day is filled with challenges, and you just got to show up and be excited about working with your team and digging through the grind, because
because even with luck, people are a lot of times not successful because they don't put in the work.
Yeah.
Right? Because once you get the luck, you still have to do the work to be successful.
10,000 hours. Steph Curry, right, John Stevens?
Great session. During the talk, I heard both Frank Slootman's name mentioned and CSM teams, and curious as a chief customer officer, your take on Frank's view that CS is somewhat unnecessary as we think about maybe cutting teams, and that it can really be covered by sales and engineering.
Frank is a legend, and he's awesome, and I love his Dutchness, and I think he's totally wrong on CSM. But it's just, how do you define the CSM team? And I think there's been so much confusion in the industry on what metrics, what skills are necessary and what metrics really matter. You've got a bunch of CSMs that are disguised as support engineers or SEs or pro-serve people, and I think there's a real role for people that, for a company, a B2B company, that helps the customer define really, really what are the use cases, and what's the architecture to implement those use cases, and what's the true metrics and ROI with those use cases, and then have a CSM team whose job is to move to the side of the customer, like they're employed by the customer. Their bonus comes from the customer achieving that ROI ahead of schedule or any other, and in that world, I think it's golden, because if dollar-based net retention is all that matters, you need those customers to know what they're getting, measure all on the way, and at the defined time period say, holy cow, I got more than I thought, and it doesn't happen by magic. But without those metrics, I think it's really hard to justify, and therefore it's easy to cut. But I think in a SaaS world, I mean, you did this
Rob.
at Coupa, I think. But.
Well, I would say the only thing I'd add to that is there's different ways to organize your company and different names for different functions. But at the end of the day, to Doug's point, if your customers aren't measurably successful, you don't have a business. I mean, that is the business at the end of the day. Yes, everybody wants growth and all that, but you start getting real churn, you erode everything. So and by the way, with measurable success comes the add-on business and the growth and everything. We used to think at Coupa about it, metaphorically, I thought about it as like planting something, planting a tree. That first win, whether it's a land and expand model or it's a big upfront deal, it doesn't matter, but I'm just landing because I want the right to prove to this customer that we're gonna give them measurable success, because once we do that, we'll have the chance to grow it in a whole host of different ways. So the function, the outcome of that function, however it's designed, is pivotal, of course.
Let's take more questions.
More questions, yeah.
They've answered well.
Hi, I'm a product person asking questions about sales, go-to-market. What is your advice in this economy for a early stage enterprise product? What's your best advice in terms of going to market to enterprise?
I can take that. I think in our company, we have, every year we build what we call V2M2, so essentially vision, value, method measures. And this year, one of the things that we built is everyone talked to customers. And it was built for product teams specifically. If product people, the product management specifically, if they are not talking to customers, in the world of SaaS, enterprise SaaS, there's nothing going to happen. So the way it used to be that the engineering will build the product, and then remember we used to call it sell what's on the truck. That used to be the sales mantra. So there's a truck on the other side of the wall, and engineering and product management will throw it over, and then they will run it, and the sales CROs will say, sell what's on the truck, and come back in 6 months, we will do a enablement session with the new stuff. And that was the modus operandi. And that worked well for on-prem because they don't upgrade. Enterprise customers don't upgrade. In the world of SaaS, what has happened? There is no wall, there is no truck. You're hosting and people are accessing it. And that is sometimes sales leaders have not fully internalized. In that world, product organization is completely tethered with an umbilical cord to the customers. And if you don't have A/B testing, if you don't have the ability to understand exactly where the customer is going and how to iteratively improve, and if you're using CS and PS and SCs and others to sort of get that message back before customers get the value, trust me, ThoughtSpot will be there to take the customer because we are exactly going for those kind of incumbents.
Rob?
I would add, make sure you have repeatability of use case in the product and make sure you very clearly articulate that core value proposition of that repeatable use case. Because you put enough reps on something or you do enough evangelistic selling, you'll get deals, you'll close stuff. There's plenty of CIOs out there that love to have Silicon Valley engineers and others working on their problems, but you'll bifurcate and you'll get into a space where you won't be able to have that repeatability. And at the early times of the company, it's really, really critical. I can tell you to the point where when we did go a little bit off-road, we were brave enough, I would say, in a number of cases to fire those customers.
Yeah.
And remove that recurring revenue. And that was really tough to do, but in hindsight, was a really smart thing to do.
And companies will grow to a point where it is actually in the world of SaaS, it is better to lose a customer than to win and then lose them. Churn is painful. Early, you probably don't realize that, but you'll come to a point where churn becomes so hard. NRR, he talks about.
Yep. Great.
Anything? No? Alex? Oh.
Hey guys, I think Jay asked the question about how you survive or manage through this period. I'm just curious, from your perspectives, how long do you feel that this is lasting? Are we getting to a point where it's getting better? Is this the new normal? Like, what would you compare it to? Just your perspectives, inside of your own businesses and experiences.
Anyone have their crystal ball?
Well, you're asking for instinct. I mean, my instinct is going to last longer than shorter.
Yeah.
That's my natural instinct. Just looking at patterns and looking at, in some extent that had something to do with the timing of our sale and understanding how spend patterns were looked at by industry. So I think a bit longer than shorter, which is also the great opportunity to get yourself really dialed in across your entire organization. But again, that's an instinctual sense.
The fact that a researcher is asking for this is actually pretty dangerous here. We should be asking you.
That's right.
From a company building point of view, I kind of feel like this is the normal. What is not normal here? The fact that CFOs need to have a justification for buying enterprise software, is that not normal? It should be the normal. The fact that customers should be able to throw away a vendor and buy somebody else if they fail to deliver the value, that should be normal. The fact that we should be able to get rid of repeatable tasks to AI, should that not be the normal? At least in our industry, this should be the normal. So if anything, I kind of feel like the froth is gone. And right now the biggest froth I see is that a lot of Google's brain team. I think they're everywhere. Seems like wherever you go, there is a founder. Oh, he was part of the Transformer team, and there's so much money being thrown at it. I think there will be another AI hype fad that will happen. That's not to say that technology itself is hype, but there will be a lot of carpet bagging happening. So those things will get wiped out too. So I don't think enterprise software SaaS business is ever going to go back to the way it was, where people are just buying because they like to do science projects.
Doug, anything?
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
I don't think we're at the normal yet.
But on the other hand, I
Maybe
think
this is normal, and it gets dips, and then it'll go back.
But I agree with Rob, right? I think this is the time to build companies. Every time you look back in history, every time there has been a downturn, the companies that have survived and have figured out how to exist and go, they end up getting really, really much, much better, bigger after a while. One, they have less competition, but two, more importantly, they become really efficient and doing the thing that what you need to do to build a big business.
Such an important point. Amazon's stock price went down 90% in 2001 or 2002.
That's right.
I don't think 2004 AWS coming out was an accident. Right.
So, yeah.
So I just had a question as I think some of us companies probably are at a point of scale and kind of revisiting our segmentation models for 2024. And this is probably a little more nuanced than I want it to be. But as we're seeing elongated sales cycles, we're seeing what you just shared with regard to expectations on what should be the norm. Would you guys be able to give us a recommendation on where would you invest in your ratios for acquisition versus expansion now, especially if you have product market fit and you're trying to scale to that next $1 billion mark?
I would say maybe answer it a little bit more broadly as my colleagues here think about their answer to that, because it's very specific. But I think this is a good time to really think about portfolio effect in your business in general. Land, expand, geographies, where are we invested, segments. Are we all in Silicon Valley? Are we in other parts of the world thoughtfully, right? Because if you want to have that magic number stay within a range that isn't crazy, there are going to be certain segments or certain geographies or certain times when you have to reach into that existing customer base and push a little bit more add-on business. So creating this portfolio effect early on and the culture of having that portfolio effect could help you as you scale. When you get to a public company environment, hitting every one of those quarters becomes much, much harder if you don't have that, right? Putting that in place early, at least for me, was very, very helpful.
Sorry, just to clarify, if you are a public company and you're now at this point where you have a global remote organization post-pandemic, right? At this point, do you choose to put your money on 180 versus 2 expansion reps? Because so much of the business is now indexing towards your install-based revenues. What do you do to start, obviously?
There's so much fidelity to that, and it's so specific to your business, and we'd have to sit down and do an 8-hour and review every metric and figure out how to do it, unless you guys have a...
I think it is like the way, a general answer that I always think about is segmentation is something that you always think I should have done it sooner, okay? Yeah. I've done that mistake every single company that I've had access to. But what I've learned at ThoughtSpot is that it is actually more complex. So there is multi-product, multi-theater, multi-segment, and then the ratio of acquisition versus expansion. And that ratio will switch between 40 to 60. So there will be a time where you want to have 60% new. And then at some point, if it is going outside of that range, I would be worried.
I just want to add one more thing to this. I heard the CEO of Clary earlier. I came and he was talking about revenue and managing and getting it precise. And I thought it was beautiful. One area to add to his presentation is quality of revenue.
Yeah.
Right? Really, what's the quality of revenue? And you're talking about that. Like, you could hit certain quarters with just driving into the install base with then new products, but then you've tapped them out, right? Yeah. Or vice versa. So that's where the finesse really is, I think.
I want to go back to the product question that I asked. This is an extremely important one. In ThoughtSpot, we are now actually building. Remember, I talked about multi-theater, multi-product, multi-segment. That product GM, something that we are actually bringing back. Product GMs who are actually thinking about like, how do I, in my specific product, what is the acquisition versus new? Because there could be a new product where you probably want to have 60 or 70% new logo, while the overall company is trying to shoot for 50-50. So there has to be someone who wakes up every day thinking about who's going to watch out for this. Otherwise, it is the innovator's dilemma, and the new products and new segments will die.
The only thing I'd add to that, just to give you a tangible working framework, is the way that I've come to define a market. There's infinite factors that create a market, but there's 4 that I found are super repetitive. And there's a cube that you should develop for every one of these. And for a public company, you're going to have hundreds of these cubes across the company. But if you want to have effective language and effective execution, you need to know which cube you're talking about. And the cube is a segment, large, medium, small, what size company you're dealing with, geo, which country, or in something like America, are you in the Northeast or are you in the Southwest? Totally different buying cultures. What buying center are you hitting? And specific, not DevSecOps. Like, I'm selling to the network engineering department within this company. And then what industry vertical? And not Fiserv. Is it investment banking? Is it commercial banking? Is it insurance? When you get those 4 and you get that cube, now from a product manager all the way through to a campaign, all the way through to a CSM, you have a consistent language. and the planning for where are you going to spend, and what should that land versus expand or other ratio becomes much more high fidelity. It also will tell you, your management time and attention in most of these cases is spread way too thin. And that goes back to Rob's quality of revenue. Like my biggest battle with most of my CROs is they are comped, I'm the head of EMEA, I am comped on my EMEA number. As a CEO, I'm comped on margin, cash flow, overall business health. That one deal you get in Saudi before you have anyone in Saudi and you're ready to actually make a wholesale investment to make the Middle East effective is a disaster for the company. It's a freaking disaster until you're ready to do it. But that only happens if you look at the cube. Like there's a time to go to Saudi. Are you ready to go to Saudi? What do all the other cubes look like across your company? It's very laborious, a lot of marketing, and other teams balk. But when they do it, the insights are pretty profound.
Well, I think we could keep going on and on, like the experience of all these three leaders. But we are out of time, unfortunately, and I wanted to thank Doug, Rob, and Sudheesh for doing this. And hope you guys all enjoyed this.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.